The Galactic Defense Academy's training hall fell silent as Cadet Thexvia's screech echoed off the crystalline walls. The Vaxian officer clutched his arm, his chitinous exoskeleton cracked and oozing blue hemolymph where his elbow joint had been moments before. On the mat before him stood the human girl, Riley Martinez, barely 5.5 feet tall, her expression shifting from reflexive combat readiness to horrified realization. I didn't mean to, Riley stammered, backing away from the injured cadet. Commander Kelthorne descended from the observation platform, his forearms gesturing frantically for the medical team. This was the third incident this month involving the human recruit, and the Academy Board was losing patience with the Deathworlder integration program. Thexvia had made a critical error, one that the training briefings explicitly warned against. He had grabbed Riley's arm from behind during the hand-to-hand combat drill, triggering what human military psychologists called a threat response cascade. On a death world like Earth, where gravity was 3 times galactic standard and predators lurked at every evolutionary turn, such responses had been honed over millions of years. The medical drone arrived, its anti-grav stretcher humming as it loaded the whimpering Vaxian. Riley stood frozen, her hands trembling. She had pulled the strike, she was certain she had. Back on Earth, that same defensive technique would have merely dislocated a shoulder or forced a release. Here, against a species whose bones contained silicate structures designed for their low-gravity homeworld, the result was catastrophic. Cadet Martinez, Isolation Room. Now, Kelthorne commanded, his translator unit conveying both authority and a hint of something else, perhaps concern. Riley nodded mutely and walked toward the exit, feeling the weight of 300 eyes from 70 different species watching her departure. She heard the whispers in languages her neural implant struggled to parse: Deathworlder, barbaric, dangerous. In the isolation room, Riley sat on the reinforced bench, the only furniture rated for human weight, and buried her face in her hands. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had scored in the 98th percentile on the tactical assessment. Her xenobiology scores were exemplary. She had even learned the 17-gesture courtesy sequence for Mytharian greetings, despite humans' limited joint flexibility making the final flourish nearly impossible. But none of that mattered when her reflexes moved faster than her conscious mind. The door hissed open an hour later. Commander Kelthorne entered, his purple carapace dulled with fatigue. Thexvia will recover, he said without preamble. The bone regeneration matrix is already taking effect. He'll be cleared for duty in 4 cycles. Riley looked up. I'm being expelled. No. Kelthorne settled his bulk onto a maglocked stool, his speaking arms folded while his lower arms gestured contemplatively. You're being reassigned. The Academy Council has determined that standard integration protocols are insufficient for your species. He pulled up a holographic display. Do you know why the Galactic Union has never encountered a successful Death World species before humanity? Riley shook her head. Because they don't survive long enough to develop space flight. The evolutionary pressures that forge your reflexes, your bone density, your neurochemistry, these same pressures typically lead to self-destruction. War. Environmental collapse. Biological arms races that end in extinction. His primary eyes focused on her intently. But humans threaded that needle. You survived your world and reached for the stars. That doesn't help Thexvia's arm, Riley said bitterly. No. But it explains why the Union needs you. Kelthorne expanded the hologram, showing star charts marked with crimson zones. There are regions of space where our species cannot go. High-gravity worlds. Toxic atmospheres. Zones where our carefully evolved bodies become liabilities. We need soldiers who can walk through hell and still function. He stood, towering over her. Report to Outpost Ragnarok tomorrow at 0600. They specialize in training Deathworlders, not to be less dangerous, but to control when and how they deploy that danger. Riley felt something shift in her chest. Not quite hope, but perhaps its precursor. And Thexvia? We'll learn not to grab a Deathworlder from behind. Kelthorne's mandibles clicked in what his species used for grim humor. Consider it an educational experience for both of you. As the commander left, Riley stared at the star chart still floating in the air, showing hostile worlds painted in threatening red. Perhaps being dangerous wasn't the problem. Perhaps she just needed to learn where to aim.